Welcome to Deep Sleep Tales, to this small sanctuary where timeless stories are told in gentle whispers, where silence settles upon you like a soft blanket, far from the world's chaos, where only words and pauses hold dominion. Tonight, I will tell you of two solitary souls and their brief encounter, that warm moment which lingers long in the heart, those slow, deep human connections that modern haste has taught us to forget. Our story unfolds in the quiet streets of the past, in the amber glow of gas lamps, in the melody of footsteps echoing across cobblestones, distant from today's noise, in an age when human connection was rare and precious, when every word, every glance, every silence carried meaning. I wonder, where are you listening to this story now? In the warm embrace of your bed, beneath blankets, sheltered from the world's weight, or perhaps in the soft depths of a chair, nestled among pillows, maybe by a window, watching the darkness outside. If you'd share with us in the comments, we'd be delighted, for every listener in this community is a silent companion, distant yet close, unseen yet present, a fellow traveler walking beside us on this journey toward peace. If these stories bring you tranquility, soften your nights, ease your passage into sleep, quiet the noise within your mind, you may join us by subscribing. I do not insist, I never insist. I merely invite you, gently leaving the door ajar. Whether to enter is yours to decide. Now the time has come to transition into our story. Settle into a comfortable position. Release every muscle, every joint of your body to the softness of bed or chair. Close your eyes slowly. Do not hurry. Carefully, as though a curtain were gently descending. Take a deep breath through your nose, down to the very bottom of your lungs. Feel the coolness of the air, its purity, then release it through your mouth, slowly, letting go of the day's entire weight with this breath. One more breath, even slower, even deeper, then release, slower still. Let go of the past, the future, tomorrow, today. Focus only on this moment, on this moment's tranquility, its stillness. Let my voice carry you, like a river, slowly, gently, to those times when two lonely souls quietly intersected, found each other, and their lives changed. We begin now, in the winter of 1878, in the north of England, among the rolling hills of Yorkshire, where stone-walled houses lined narrow, winding streets, where dark gray smoke rose from every chimney, where church bells echoed across the valley, each morning, in a small town called Ashworth, in the first week of January, in winter's deepest, coldest, darkest period, as evening's early darkness fell, when the hour had not yet reached 4:30, when those eerie twilight hours before sunset had arrived. The sky was blanketed with a thick leaden cover, as though a great blanket had been spread over the town. Heavy clouds moved low, slowly, silently above the rooftops, nearly touching them, and in the air there was the scent of snow, that sharp, metallic, undeniable smell that announced winter's deepening, its lengthening, filling lungs with cold, damp air felt with every breath. The streets were wet, traces of morning rain still lingered, small puddles forming between cobblestones, in cracks, in hollows, and these puddles reflected the yellow flickering light of the evening's first lamps, the gas lamps the town's lamplighter had just recently lit and passed, golden glimmers, dancing on the water, trembling in uncertain light plays. Harley Lane was one of the side streets just a block away from Market Street, the town's main thoroughfare. Not as wide as Market Street, carriages passed with difficulty, but it was still peaceful, away from shopping's clamor. Shops, houses, small workshops lined both sides, each with its own quiet presence, its own light, its own scent. Right in the middle of Harley Lane, on the north side, on the ground floor of a narrow, long two-story building, its facade of brick, the mortar between stones whitened, darkened by years of moisture, there was a small book and stationery shop, a wooden sign reading Winifred Ashton Books and Stationery, made of pine, carefully carved years ago by a local carpenter, letters painted black but faded in places, hung by chains just above the door. The shop's window was narrow, perhaps 1.5 meters wide, 2 meters high, but from within, warm yellow light cast an inviting glow onto the street, like a lantern in the dark street, like a beacon. Behind the window glass, books were arranged carefully, as one would regard works of art. Bound, leather-covered old books, some stood upright, some slightly open, pages visible. Beside them quill pens, long, slender, made of bird feathers, their tips sharpened, ink bottles of crystal, dark blue, red, black inks within, stacks of paper, cream-colored, heavy, quality papers, each placed with care, like a composition, upon the glass where the outside cold met the inside warmth, on that border between two worlds. A thin layer of fog had formed. It had slightly clouded the glass, but not completely obscured it. The interior was still visible, like a dream, uncertain yet alluring. When you opened the shop door, wooden door, worn, painted green, but paint peeling in places, its brass knob cold and heavy, a small bell chimed softly, a delicate silver bell attached by a cord to the door's upper frame, a gentle sound, a pleasant sound, not aggressive, kind, as though saying welcome. Inside, the air was warm, nearly hot. The small fireplace in the corner was burning, an old fireplace built of brick. Inside, coal and wood burned together, red-orange flames dancing. Blue flames sometimes leapt from among the logs. It crackled, it snapped. The smoke's faintly sweet, faintly bitter scent had mingled with the air. Wood smoke, coal smell, old familiar scents. On the walls, shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Wood, oak, dark color, polished, covered with years' patina. Upon each were hundreds of books, perhaps thousands. Old novels, Dickens, the Bronte sisters, George Eliot, poetry books, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Shelley, Keats, history books, the Roman Empire, the Napoleonic Wars, the British monarchy, travelogues, Africa, India, the American continent, religious texts, Bibles, hymnals, prayer books, not all in alphabetical order, perhaps by subject, perhaps simply random, an order settled over time, but there was an order nonetheless, one the proprietor knew, understood, shared with customers. Right in the shop's center, between the window and the fireplace, stood a small table, wood, perhaps walnut, worn, upon it countless scratches, pen marks, ink stains, coffee rings, years' marks of use. Upon it burned a gas lamp, brass body, glass shade slightly misty. Its light was soft, flickering, yellowish white. Around the table were two chairs, wooden, with backs, cushioned, covered in reddish velvet cushions, worn but still comfortable, for customers to sit and browse books, examine them at leisure, make their decisions. On the floor were wide old floorboards of pine. They creaked here and there when stepped upon. Familiar sounds, sounds like houses' memories. Upon them lay a faded rug, Turkish or Persian perhaps, once brightly patterned in red and blue, now turned to pale pink and gray tones, but still beautiful, still whispering those Eastern tales. In the air there was the scent of paper, century-old leaves, ink, pencil traces, leather bindings, a fine layer of dust, slight mildew, but a pleasant mildew, harmless, causing no illness, merely history's scent, the past's breathing in and out, centuries' quiet whispers. Inside the shop, in one of the chairs beside the table, slightly leaning forward, writing something in a large ledger, was Winifred Ashton. Winifred was 42 years old, exactly 42. Last month in December, her birthday had passed, quietly, alone, with a single candle, a modest cake. No one knew, no one congratulated her, and she had not expected them to. She was of medium height, perhaps 165 centimeters, slender build. In childhood she had been thin, now slender. There is a difference. Her bones were not prominent, but her body was graceful, her movements deliberate, thoughtful. Her dark chestnut hair, once bright, lustrous, now somewhat dulled, was gathered in a tight bun at the back of her head, secured with a silver clasp. A few streaks of gray hair showed at her temples. The first gray hairs had begun appearing at 35. Now each passing year they multiplied a bit more, a reminder of time's passage, youth's departure, Middle Ages settling in. Her face was pale. She rarely went outside, saw little sun, slight wrinkles around her eyes, fine lines. They deepened when she smiled, but she rarely smiled. Yet it was a beautiful face, regular features, balanced, a thoughtful face, broad forehead, defined but not harsh chin. Her eyes were hazel, greenish brown, deep, tired yet kind gazes, understanding gazes. Winifred wore a dark green woolen dress, thick weave, winter fabric, high-collared, reaching to the throat, long-sleeved, extending to the wrists, plain, no adornment, no lace, simply straight, practical yet a quality dress. She had it made 5 years ago from the town's tailor. She still wore it, cared for it well, mended it, cleaned it carefully. Over it she had taken a brown shawl, wool soft, wrapped around her shoulders, knotted at her chest, keeping her warm. Her hands were slender and long, her fingers graceful, nails cut short, practical. Ink stains marked her fingers, especially her right hand's middle and index fingers. Years' traces, marks of hands that held pens. She did not yet wear spectacles, but sometimes when reading, especially in the evenings when light diminished, she squinted. Perhaps soon spectacles would be needed, but not yet. She still resisted. Winifred had operated this shop for 17 years, exactly 17 years, since 1861. She had opened it at 25, with a small inheritance left by her father. Her father, John Ashton, the town's former postman, had died of pneumonia at 63. Her mother earlier, when Winifred was 14, during childbirth, attempting to deliver a baby brother. Both died, baby and mother. Her father had raised Winifred alone, with love, with care, but there was no money. A small house, a simple life, but there were books. Her father loved books. Every evening he read to her, and Winifred learned to love books, to love words, to love stories. When her father died, he left a small inheritance, not much but sufficient, and Winifred decided she would use this money to open a shop, a bookshop, because she loved books, because she didn't know what else to do, because she had not married, probably would not marry, and she needed work, needed a life. And since then, this had been her life, from morning to evening, every day, except Sundays. Sundays she went to church, then rested, read. But the other 6 days she was here, opening at 8 in the morning, closing at 6 in the evening, 10 hours, 17 years, thousands of days. She had never married. There had been suitors in her youth, 3. One was the town barber's son, one a farm owner's nephew, one a distant relative. All serious proposals, but she had accepted none. She didn't know exactly why. Perhaps she was too selective. Perhaps she hadn't loved any of them enough. Perhaps she was afraid of marriage, of childbirth, of her mother's fate. Perhaps she was simply happier with books, freer alone. Now she was 42. The possibility of marriage was nearly zero. She knew this, had accepted it. But sometimes, especially on winter nights, when darkness fell early, when wind whistled at the window, loneliness weighed heavily. It settled on her chest, made breathing difficult. She lived in the upper floor of the shop, reached by a narrow staircase, wooden steps creaking. A small 3-room flat, 1 bedroom, 1 sitting room, 1 kitchen. Simple furnishings. The bed had a wooden frame, quilt and pillows of white cotton. In the sitting room, a sofa, 2 chairs, a small table, shelves full of books, of course. In the kitchen, a stove, cupboard, table, chairs. But it was comfortable, warm, a safe place, away from the outside world's noise, her own small kingdom. She rose early in the mornings at 6, 7 in the dark, especially in winter. The sun rose at 8, but she was already awake, making tea, boiling water. The kettle whistled, tea steeping. Earl Grey usually, sometimes Darjeeling. She had a light breakfast, toast, butter, sometimes jam, sometimes cheese, eggs rarely, usually simple, quick. Then she went downstairs and opened the shop, wiped the window, arranged the shelves, began the day's routine. Throughout the day, a few customers came, not many, 10, 15 people perhaps, some days fewer. Most were familiar, the town's residents. Dr. Thompson, book enthusiast, came weekly. Mrs. Porter, the seamstress, loved novels, usually romance novels. Young Edward, the farmer's son, sometimes bought textbooks, sometimes adventure novels. They bought books, chatted for a few minutes, weather, town news, light things. Then they left, paid their money. Winifred thanked them, said goodbye. In the evenings, she closed the shop at 6, locked the door, silenced the bell, went upstairs. She cooked dinner, simple meals, soup, bread, potatoes, vegetables, meat rarely, expensive, sometimes fish. On Saturday, there was sometimes fresh fish at market. She ate, washed dishes, then moved to the sitting room, read a book by the fire, sometimes did needlework, torn stockings, sewing buttons. Sometimes she simply sat, watched the fire, thought about the past, the future, the present, then went to bed at 9:15, sometimes earlier. She was tired and needed to rise early in the morning. It was routine, unchanging, had been this way for 17 years, thousands of nights. Winifred did not complain, at least not aloud, didn't much admit it even to herself. This was life. These were the consequences of her own choices. She hadn't chosen her father, hadn't chosen poverty, but she had chosen the shop, had chosen to remain unmarried. And generally she was happy, at least not unhappy, not hungry, not in the cold, had a roof, had work, had books. What more could she want? But sometimes, quite rarely, in quiet moments, she felt a longing for connection, not just friendship. She had friends in town, acquaintances, but it was all superficial, polite but distant. She wanted something deeper, to be understood, to be seen, to share, for one soul to meet another soul, to share thoughts, to comfortably share silence. But such things were rarely found, especially in a small town. Everyone knew everyone, but no one truly knew anyone, especially after a certain age. After 40, people had settled, didn't change much. That evening, that cold January evening, as the hour approached 5, it was not yet 5, perhaps 4:55. Winifred was writing the day's shop sales in her ledger, a large ledger, black binding, lined pages, a line for each day, date, number of sales, income, expenses, small figures. Today, 3 book sales, 1 poetry book, 1 novel, 1 history book, total 3 shillings, 6 pence, 1 pen sale, a quill pen, 6 pence, some paper, letter paper, 1 shilling, in total 5 shillings. Not considered a good day, but not bad either. Sales declined in winter months. People stayed home, didn't spend much. It would increase a bit when spring came. Outside, the air was growing steadily darker. The sky was turning from leaden gray to darker, nearly black. Street lamps had begun being lit. Lamplighter George had passed just 2 hours ago, lighting each lamp one by one with his long pole. The lantern's light filtered through her window, yellow strips of light falling onto the floor, the wall, the shelves. The fireplace was burning. The fire had lowered somewhat. Winifred had risen and added another log half an hour ago. Now it had caught again. The air was warm, perhaps a bit too much. Winifred had loosened her shawl. Calm. Winifred was slowly moving her pen across the paper, writing the figures, small, orderly numbers, quietly, thoughtfully. Part of her mind was here with the numbers, with the accounts, but part was very far away in the past, in her youth years, in her father's voice, in her mother's face. She couldn't remember because she was so young when she died, but which she tried to imagine. The bell at the door chimed, that familiar delicate sound, silvery ring. Winifred raised her head slowly, returning from thoughts to the present, looked toward the door. A man was entering, pushing the door slowly, not forcefully, gently. Cold air rushed in with him, icy, sharp, damp air. It slightly trembled the fire's flame. Flames danced, shadows played on the wall. The man closed the door behind him, gently, quietly, carefully. Then he removed his hat, black, wide-brimmed, old style, held it in his hand, before his chest, a polite gesture. The man was old, clearly so. Winifred saw this immediately. 65, perhaps 70 years old, perhaps even older. Difficult to tell. Some people look younger than their years, some older. This man carried the maturity his age bestowed upon his face. He was tall, perhaps 180 centimeters, but he had probably been taller once. Now somewhat stooped, shoulders somewhat dropped, back slightly hunched. Age's effect. He was thin, not very thin, but slender. Long bony hands, bony face, slightly sunken cheeks. On his head were dark gray hairs, grizzled gray among white strands, thin, neatly combed, swept back, passing over the ears. His face was wrinkled, deep lines, horizontal lines on his forehead, crow's feet around his eyes, lines downward at the mouth's corners, a map of a lived life, each line a story, each wrinkle a memory, but a kind face, tired yet kind. His eyes were light blue, water blue, pale but clear, clean, honest eyes. He wore an old but clean overcoat, black wool, thick weave. Patches had been carefully sewn, at the elbows, at the pocket's edge, not visible at first glance, but upon closer inspection, evident, carefully sewn patches. Perhaps he had sewn them himself, perhaps a tailor. Beneath a dark suit, vest, white shirt, the collar button was fastened, tie properly tied. He was clean, smelled pleasant, soap scent, faint tobacco scent, but not unpleasant, well groomed. In his hand he carried a walking stick, wood, perhaps walnut. Worn, his hand had frequently touched it, polished over time. At the top, a silver knob, small, plain. The man walked slowly into the shop, each step taken with care. The stick tapped lightly on the floor, tok-tok-tok sounds on the wooden floor. He looked around, examined his surroundings. The shelves, hundreds of books, the fireplace with its burning fire, the table with its lamp, the window front, the display. In his eyes was an expression of familiarity, perhaps nostalgia, perhaps merely appreciation, a book lover's gaze, one who loves such places. Winifred stood slowly, pushing her chair back. She clasped her hands before her dress. Habit, a polite posture, a waiting posture. "Good evening," she said. Her voice was soft, polite, professional, yet warm. The voice for greeting customers, the voice she had used for 17 years. "Good evening," the man replied. His voice was low, somewhat raspy with age, vocal cords worn, but it was a warm voice, sincere, polite. "Have I disturbed you?" he added, hesitant, as though worried about disturbing, at the late hour closing time. No, absolutely not. Please," Winifred said quickly to reassure him, gesturing toward the table with her hand, inviting, "Please, come in. How may I help you?" The man approached the table, slow steps, but did not sit. He remained standing, leaned slightly on his stick, placed his weight upon it. "I am looking for a book," he said, in his voice a hesitation, as though thinking the request would seem strange. "A poetry book, Wordsworth, lyrical ballads, if possible. I don't know if you have it, an old edition. Perhaps you cannot find it, but I asked." Winifred nodded, smiled slightly, reassuring. "Let me look," she said. "It should be in our poetry section. Wordsworth is popular. I generally keep it in stock." She walked toward the shelves, the large shelves on the wall, the poetry section. Her fingers traveled across the book's spines, read the names. Not exactly alphabetical, but she knew where everything was. Keats, Shelley, Byron, Tennyson, and then Wordsworth. Several volumes. She selected one. Old, leather-bound, dark brown. The binding worn. corners frayed but solid, pages solid. She placed it on the table, extended it to the man, with both hands, as though offering a precious gift. The man took the book, took it in his hands, gently, with both hands, as though it were a fragile object, a precious treasure. He felt its weight, the texture, the leather. He opened the pages slowly, carefully. Yellowed papers, edges slightly brown, old ink traces, black, faded but still legible. He drew in the scent, that old book smell, vanilla, dust, thyme scent. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a moment. Perhaps he remembered something, then opened them. His eyes traveled over the pages, found a poem, lines written in early spring. He began reading, silently. His lips moved, but no sound emerged. He was reading internally. In his eyes, a distancing, going to another time, another place. Winifred watched him motionless, silently. The expression on the man's face, the distance in his eyes, his lost state, and she felt something inside. Recognition, kinship, empathy. This man was like her, loved books, loved poetry, attached to the past, living in memories, perhaps also lonely, perhaps a person who had been lonely for many years. She could see such things now. Years had taught her to read people. The man closed the book slowly, carefully. He looked at Winifred. In his eyes now was clarity, a decision. "This is perfect," he said. "Exactly the addition I was looking for. How much?" Winifred stated the price from memory. A small sum, 2 shillings 6 pence. Reasonable, not expensive. The man nodded, took money from his pocket, from an old leather wallet, metal coins. He counted carefully. The light was slightly insufficient. He brought them close to his eyes. Then he placed them in Winifred's hand, into her palm. The metal's coldness. Winifred took the money, wrapped the book in a small paper, brown wrapping paper, folded the corners carefully, tied with string set, thin string, made a knot, secure but openable, professional, years of practice. "Is it a gift?" Winifred asked with curiosity. To start conversation, she sometimes asked customers, a way to begin talking. The man nodded, smiled slightly, his first smile, very slight, corner of mouth rising. "No," he said, "for myself. I used to read Wordsworth a great deal, in my youth, at university. It's been years. Now I wanted to read again. I retired. There's time now." Winifred smiled, an understanding smile, sincere. Sharing, "Wordsworth is beautiful," she said. Her tone warmed, engaged with the topic. Nature, peace, simplicity, not complex but deep, especially in winter. Reading by the fire is ideal. It soothes the soul. The man nodded. A gleam appeared in his eyes, the gleam of being understood, of sharing, that silent understanding between two book lovers. "Yes," he said. His voice warmed. "Exactly so. It soothes the soul. Simple yet deep. You used exactly the right words. Do you also read Wordsworth?" "I read something every night," Winifred said. "Sometimes poetry. Wordsworth, Keats especially. Sometimes novels. Eliot, Dickens. Books are good companions, especially for those who live alone," she said, then stopped. Had she said too much, been too personal? But she had already said it. The man looked at her, a long look, thoughtful, understanding, non-judgmental. Then he smiled slightly, his eyes warmed. Lines deepened on his face, but added beauty, added warmth. "Yes," he said slowly, "good companions, perhaps the best. They never disappoint, never abandon. They're always there, on the shelf, waiting." A silence occurred, a brief but warm silence, not uncomfortable, not strange, natural. Two people for a moment understood, shared, connected. The logs in the fireplace were crackling, sparks flying, flame flaring. From outside in the distance came the sounds of a carriage's wheels, then fading. But inside the shop, time seemed to have stopped. The outside world was distant. "My name is Winifred," Winifred said. She extended her hand forward, a gesture she rarely made, but she felt it, felt she should do it. Percival, the man said. He took her hand, shook it. A light, brief handshake, gentle but meaningful. 2 palms met. Warmth was shared. Percival Radcliffe, pleased to make your acquaintance. I as well, Mr. Radcliffe, Winifred said. She withdrew her hand, returned it to its place. Are you from around here, Mr. Radcliffe? Winifred asked. She wanted to extend the conversation. Usually she wouldn't. She'd wait for customers to leave. But now she wanted to. This old man was interesting, warm. Yes, Percival said, somewhat surprised by the question, but answered. I was born in Ashworth, right in this town, on Bridge Street, in a small house. That house is gone now, demolished years ago, but I lived many years elsewhere. In London, 10 years, then in Manchester, 20 years. I was an engineer, railway engineer. Bridges, rails, stations, exhausting work, but I loved it. 6 months ago, I retired, now tired, and I returned to my homeland, to the place I know. Now I live here, in a small house on Elm Street, renting a quiet place, has a garden. Welcome, Winifred said sincerely. Welcome back to town. Returning after years must be difficult. Everything changed. Yes and no, Percival said thoughtfully. Some things have changed. New buildings, new people, but some things are the same. The streets, the church, the hills, and it feels good, feels familiar. London was large, noisy. I was lonely there. Here it's calm. Thank you, Percival said. He took the book, the package, didn't put it in his pocket, held it in his hand carefully. He put on his hat, placed it on his head, adjusted it. A lovely shop, he said. He took one last look around. Warm, peaceful. I hadn't been here before, hadn't noticed it passing by, but I'll come now. I'll buy other books. When Wordsworth is finished, there are other poets. A warmth arose within Winifred, slight, unexpected, a pleasant feeling. Satisfaction, perhaps more, perhaps hope. You're always welcome, she said. I'll be pleased to welcome you. New books arrive. Old books are found. Percival walked to the door, slow steps, the stick clicking. He opened the door. Cold air rushed in again. He paused at the threshold, turned, one last look. Good night, Mrs. Ashton, he said. Polite, formal, but warm. Good night, Mr. Radcliffe, Winifred said. Enjoy the book. I'm sure I will, Percival said. He smiled one last time. Then he went outside. The door closed behind him. Slowly, the bell chimed one last time. Silence returned, but a different silence, a filled silence. Winifred returned to the table, sat in the chair. She looked at her ledger. The figures were still there, but she didn't continue writing, as though she had forgotten. Her hand remained raised with the pen, thoughtful. Her eyes slid to the window. Outside, she could see Percival's silhouette. He was moving away slowly, in the darkness, passing under the street lamp. Light struck his face for a moment, then darkness swallowed him. His stick clicked on the pavement, tok-tok-tok, rhythmic sounds. Then he disappeared completely, turned the corner, was gone. Winifred sat for a long time. She didn't know how long, perhaps 5 minutes, perhaps 10. She thought, a new customer, an old man, named Percival. He had bought a book, Wordsworth, 2 shillings 6pence, that was all. An ordinary sale. It happened 10 times a day. But there was something she couldn't define, something different, a connection, an understanding, as though 2 people for a moment, a brief moment, had shared their souls. Words had been few, but meaning was much. Her eyes traveled over the table's surface, where the money had been, now in the drawer, where the book had been, now empty. But there were traces. She thought, perhaps he'll come again. She said, perhaps he won't. Customers come and go, but something inside, something small, hope, curiosity, anticipation had appeared, and this was pleasant, something she hadn't felt for a long time. She stood, added wood to the fireplace, revived the fire. It was time to close the shop. It was getting towards 6. She looked outside. Darkness had completely fallen. Street lamps were burning. A few people were passing hurriedly, returning home, fleeing from the cold. She locked the shop door, silenced the bell, lowered the window lantern's wick. Light dimmed, then went out. She checked the fireplace. Safe. She went upstairs. Slowly, the stairs creaked with familiar sounds. Upstairs, in her room, she prepared dinner. Soup, left over from yesterday, she heated it. Bread, butter, simple but filling. She ate, slowly, thoughtfully. Then by the fire, she realized at that moment, she took a book in her hand. Poetry book, Keats. But she didn't read it, just held it in her hand. She thought of Percival, his voice, his face, that distance in his eyes, that moment of understanding. And she smiled, slightly, to herself in the night silence. The next day in the afternoon, toward 2 o'clock, the sun was shining weakly through the clouds. The light was pale, insufficient. Winifred was in the shop, arranging books on the shelves, dusting them with a soft cloth, an old cotton cloth. She carefully took each book in her hands, wiped its spine, its covers, gently cleaning, returning it to its place, each one on the shelf, in the right place. This was her weekly routine: order, cleanliness. Outside, light snow was falling. First snow, real snow. It had begun last night, continued in the morning, now slowed in the afternoon, but still falling. White flakes descended slowly, silently, from the sky, onto the street, onto roofs, onto pavements. The world was softening, like cotton. Sounds were being swallowed. Everything was becoming silent. The bell chimed. That familiar sound. Winifred turned her head, somewhat surprised, not expecting customers. Snow was falling. No one would come out. But Percival was entering. Percival Radcliffe, the man from last evening. This time on his hat were snowflakes, white dots. On his shoulders, on his overcoat, accumulated at shoulder blade level. He entered, closed the door behind him, quickly, to cut off the cold. He removed his hat, gently, shook off the snow with his hand, so as not to dirty the floor. A thoughtful gesture. "Good afternoon," Winifred said, in her voice surprise, but pleasant surprise, smiling, because she truly was happy to see him. She didn't know exactly why. An unexpected visit, but pleasant surprise. Her face had brightened. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Ashton," Percival said, in his voice slight breathlessness. He had walked. Walking in snow is difficult. Moreover, elderly. In his hand was a small package wrapped in brown paper, tied with string. He held it carefully, with both hands. "I brought something for you," he said. He approached the table slowly, placed the package on the table, lightly. "For you." Winifred was surprised, truly surprised. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened slightly. She wasn't expecting such a thing. She approached the table, looked at the package, small, rectangular. What could it be? "For me?" she said, in her voice disbelief. "Why? I mean, thank you, but why?" "Last night while reading Wordsworth, I remembered something," Percival said. He smiled, slight, a warm smile. "I had a friend, years ago in London. He dealt in tea, brought me different teas, and while talking with you about books, about loneliness, I thought perhaps Mrs. Ashton also enjoys a good tea, and I came across it today, this morning while walking, a merchant in the market, and I bought it. I thought you might like it. A small thing, please." Winifred took the package, took it in her hands. She felt its weight, light but its meaning heavy. She opened it slowly, the paper gently, without tearing. She folded it carefully, to save for later. Inside was a tea tin medium size. On it flower patterns, pink, blue, gold gilded. Eastern work perhaps, Chinese or Indian. Beautiful, elegant. And on it was affixed a small paper, white, a handwritten note. Percival's hand, trembling but legible. "Darjeeling tea, for drinking when snow falls. P.R." Winifred looked at the tin, held it in her hands, looked at the note, read the words, read them again, then looked at Percival, at his face, his eyes. In her eyes was a moistening. Tears were gathering, slight at the eye's edges, but she was feeling it. Her throat was knotted. She couldn't speak for a moment. No one had brought her such a gift in years. 10 years, 15 years, perhaps never. Small, seemingly insignificant, but very meaningful, chosen with thought, prepared with care, dedicated with his own handwriting. "Thank you so much," she finally said, her voice slightly trembling, hoarse. "Mr. Radcliffe, you're very kind, truly. Thank you so much. Very lovely, very thoughtful." Percival nodded, slight, modest. "It's nothing, Mrs. Ashton," he said. "Truly a small thing. I just thought you work here alone, long hours. Perhaps a good tea would please you, some comfort, some warmth. Darjeeling is light, floral, leaves freshly picked in autumn. I hope you'll like it." Winifred smiled. She quickly wiped her tears, was a bit embarrassed, but didn't hide it. Sincere, a warm smile. Her face brightened, genuine joy. "I'll love it very much," she said. "I'm sure I'll love it very much. Thank you so much. And actually," she paused, gathered courage, "if you have time, shall we steep it now? We'll drink together. Snow is falling outside. It's cold. It's warm here. The fire is burning. Would that be all right?" Percival thought for a moment, his eyes on Winifred's face, reading her. Then he nodded, slow, definite. "I'd love to," he said. "If it's no trouble, I'd love to. Thank you." "No trouble at all," Winifred said quickly. "On the contrary, it would be very nice. Please sit. May I take your coat?" Percival removed his coat. Winifred took it, hung it on a hook, an old hook on the wall. Then she moved to the kitchen corner. Behind the shop, behind the shelves, was a small kitchen corner. Hidden as it were, customers didn't see it. A stove, 2 burners, gas, a water heater, copper, old but shiny, teacups, porcelain, white, blue flower pattern, saucers, a teapot. She filled the heater with water, water drawn from the well. She had filled it this morning. She lit the stove. Flame flared blue. She placed the heater, waited. She talked with Percival. Her back turned, but she could hear his voice. "Is the snow very heavy outside?" she asked. Conversation, natural. "No, light," Percival said. He had sat at the table, relaxed. "But it's begun to accumulate. I was slipping a bit while walking. I was careful. Old bones break easily." He laughed lightly at himself. "Please be careful," Winifred said, sincere, worried. "These streets become slippery. There shouldn't be an accident." "I'll be careful," Percival said. "I have the stick. It helps." The water began to boil. Whistle sound. Winifred prepared the teapot, put warm water inside to heat it, then emptied it. She opened the Darjeeling tea tin. Scent spread light, floral, beautiful. She put a few spoonfuls inside the teapot, poured boiling water over it. She closed the lid. She took a cover, covered the teapot to let it steep. 3 or 4 minutes. Meanwhile, she prepared the cups. 2 cups, saucers, small spoons, sugar bowl, sugar cubes, milk jug, a little milk. It was cold, but no problem. She brought everything to the table, on a tray, wooden tray. She sat across from Percival, waited until the teapot was ready. "Do you have family at home, Mr. Radcliffe?" she asked, with curiosity but polite, not private. "No," Percival said, slow, thoughtful. "I'm alone. I never married. I almost married in my 30s. A beautiful woman, but it didn't work out. Work called to Manchester. She wanted to stay in London. We separated. Then there was no opportunity. Age passed, work was busy, and you get used to loneliness. Me too," Winifred said. Open, felt comfortable. "I never married. There had been suitors in my youth, but it didn't work out. I don't know why. Perhaps I was afraid. Perhaps I'm selective. Perhaps books felt safer. And now I'm 42, probably too late." She smiled, not sad, accepting. 42 is young," Percival said. "I'm 72. Now it's late, but you're young. Anything can happen. You're kind, Winifred said, but one must be realistic. But it's all right. I'm used to it. I'm happy, generally. The teapot was ready. Winifred stood, brought it, poured into cups. Amber-colored liquid, slight steam rising, scent spreading. She served Percival, poured for herself too. She added sugar, stirred, drank her first sip. They drank the tea slowly, silently. Warmth spread inside them. Stomach relaxed, soul relaxed. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they were silent. But it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. No discomfort. Comfortable, peaceful silence. Two people beside each other. No need to talk always. Presence is enough sometimes. Percival told more about his life in London. Engineering work, building bridges. They had worked on the Thames. How calculations were done. Railways, laying tracks. Long years, 10-hour workdays. Exhausting work but satisfying. Making things, lasting things, that future generations would use. The factories in Manchester, smoke, pollution, but there was work, there was money. He was lonely, but busy. Winifred told more about opening the shop, her father's death, use of the inheritance, the first years. No customers, no money. It almost closed, but she persevered. She advertised, placed announcements. Gradually customers came, regular customers, now stable, not profitable but standing, sufficient to live on. Her struggles, her successes, the pleasure of selling books, when a customer was happy with a book, when they returned, when they thanked her, what she felt. Both had never married, both were alone, both loved books, poetry, history. Both were somewhat stuck in the past, but tried to look hopefully to the future, at least tried to. Life continued. Age passed, but there were still days to live. Still things to see, books to read, moments to share. When it was getting toward 3, perhaps past 3, the snow had intensified outside. Looking through the window, you could see the street had turned white. No cars passing, no people. Silent world. Inside the shop, it was warm, the fireplace burning, fire strong, wood smell. The tea was finished, but they were still sitting, cups empty, but held in hands, like a connection. They were talking, sometimes laughing, light, soft laughs. Percival told a memory. In Manchester, a miscalculation had been made. The bridge almost collapsed. Panic, but they'd corrected it at the last moment. Winifred laughed, imagined. Percival young, worried, rushing, now old, calm, telling stories. Finally, Percival stood slowly. His knees creaked, perhaps hurt, but he didn't show it. I must go, he said. I must get home before dark. There's snow. Walking will take time. I have the stick, but still must be careful. Winifred also stood, her insides emptied a bit. She didn't want him to leave, but life is like this. Meetings and farewells. Of course, she said. I understand. Thank you so much for coming. And for the tea. Truly very beautiful. A very lovely gift. I thank you, Percival said. Sincere. For the conversation. For the tea. For your hospitality. I haven't had such a pleasant time in a long while. Loneliness can be heavy, but today it was light. Winifred smiled, warmed. It was the same for me, she said. Truly lovely. Every day is the same, routine, but today was different, beautiful. They walked to the door together. Percival put on his coat, buttoned it. Difficult work, fingers clumsy with age. Winifred wanted to help, but didn't. Pride, respect. He put on his hat, placed it on his head, adjusted it. He took his walking stick. Winifred opened the door. Cold air rushed in, biting, mixed with snow, white snowflakes flying, wind slight but sharp. Percival stopped at the threshold, turned, looked at Winifred. May I come again, he asked, his voice low, hesitant, serious, as though afraid of being refused. He was fragile at that moment, old yet like a child. Winifred smiled, sincere, warm. Her eyes shone. Please, she said, genuine. "You're always welcome, Mr. Radcliffe. My door is always open. We'll have tea again. Talk about books, about life, about everything." Percival nodded, in his eyes a relief, a joy, a gratitude, as though a weight had dropped. "Then I'll come," he said. "Soon, very soon. Good afternoon, Mrs. Ashton. Be careful in the snow." "You be careful too," Winifred said. "Good afternoon." Percival went outside, into the snow, white world. He began walking, slow, careful. He was using the stick like a tool piercing the snow, first striking the ground, checking, then stepping. Smart, experienced. Winifred stood at the door's threshold, watched him. She was cold, but didn't care. The dark silhouette moving away among white snowflakes. Black coat, white snow. Contrast, a beautiful picture. Then he turned the corner, disappeared, became invisible. Winifred closed the door slowly, silently, turned inside. She was cold, shivered. She approached the fire, warmed her hands. She looked at the table. 2 empty cups, teapot, tea tin, small note paper, Percival's handwriting. She took the note, read it again. Darjeeling tea, for drinking when snow falls. PR. She smiled, in her heart a warmth. Something had changed, something she couldn't define but felt. The shop was the same, the shelves same, books same. Her life was the same, routine was the same, but inside her, something was different, small but important. A warmth, a hope, a connection, a friendship's beginning, perhaps more. Who knows? The future will show. She folded the note, put it in her pocket. She placed the tea tin on the shelf, a special place where she could see it, to remember every day, that moment, that connection. Weeks passed. January slowly turned to February. Calendar pages changed. Days were still short, nights long. Cold continued. February passed into March, the last winter month. But spring approached. Signs appeared. Days began lengthening slightly. The sun rose a bit earlier, set a bit later. Birds returned, began singing in the mornings. Snow fell a few more times, then melted, then fell again, then melted for the last time. Earth appeared from beneath the snow, brown, wet, but earth. Winifred's days were now less lonely. Routine hadn't changed. Still rise in morning, open shop, wait for customers, close in evening, go upstairs, eat dinner, read, sleep. But now there was a difference, an anticipation, a curiosity. Perhaps today he'll come. Perhaps today Percival will come. Percival was coming, regularly, twice a week, sometimes 3 times, Tuesday, Thursday, sometimes Saturday, irregular but frequent, afternoons usually, 2, 3 o'clock. The shop becomes quiet at these hours, few customers. Sometimes he bought books, other poets. He bought Keats, bought Shelley, a volume of Byron. He bought a history book about the Napoleonic Wars. He bought a novel from Dickens, David Copperfield. He read them all. Then they discussed for hours what he'd thought, which character he'd liked, which scene had moved him. Sometimes he just visited, without buying books, just to stop by, to say hello, to ask how Winifred was, and he stayed. They drank tea. It had become routine now. Winifred always kept it ready, the tea, the cups. She knew he would come, felt it. Toward 2 o'clock she listened, waited for the bell sound, and he came. The door opened. Percival entered, smiling. Warm, familiar face. They conversed, sometimes for hours, from 2 to 4, 4:30. If customers came, they paused but then continued. They shared their lives, their memories, childhood, youth, middle age, their thoughts, their fears, their hopes, their regrets, their dreams. Percival told of London, Manchester, the factory world, the workers, the bosses, wealth and poverty, the complexity of the Victorian era, progress and misery side by side. Winifred told of Ashworth, town life, the small world, everyone knowing everyone, nothing staying secret, but at the same time being safe, being familiar, being unchanging. They shared slowly, gently, layer by layer, like an onion skin. Outer layers first, then inner layers, secret layers, sensitive layers, and trust formed. A friendship was being built, strong, deep, perhaps more, perhaps not love in the classical sense, not young love, but perhaps something deeper than love. Two old souls finding each other, understanding each other, leaning on each other, loneliness shared, and when shared, lightened. Winifred now woke happier in the mornings, not unconsciously, aware. There was a reason. Percival, his presence, his being in her life. When opening the shop, she was more willing. She awaited the day's progress, for 2 o'clock to approach, because perhaps today Percival would come, and he came most of the time, and when he came her insides warmed, her face smiled, the day brightened. Percival had also changed. It was noticeable. He appeared less stooped, shoulders more upright, walk somewhat livelier, still using the stick but leaning less, face less pale, eyes brighter, speech livelier. He laughed sometimes, rare, but he did. When Winifred made a joke, told a funny story from town, and he laughed, his voice deep, sincere. Now when leaving home, he was more purposeful. He had a place to go, someone to see, Winifred, to talk with her, spend time, not alone anymore, at least not completely alone. He had a friend, perhaps more. One March evening, late in the month, end of March, the weather had warmed somewhat. Winter had begun withdrawing. First spring signs were appearing. Snow completely melted. Earth had begun drying. Buds had appeared on trees, small green dots. Leaves would come soon. Birds sang in the mornings very early, at 5, 6, cheerful sounds. Life was awakening. That evening, Percival came to the shop. He was somewhat different, seemed excited, in his eyes a gleam. In his hand was a bouquet of flowers, snowdrops, early spring flowers, white, small, delicate flowers, buds, green stems, clean scent. Mrs. Ashton, he said, formal but his voice trembling slightly, I brought something for you. He extended the flowers to Winifred with both hands, offered gift. Winifred took the flowers, held them, looked. They were beautiful. She smelled them light, sweet scent, fresh, alive. Tears gathered in her eyes, but these were tears of joy, tears of happiness. No one had brought her flowers. For years, perhaps never. Men holding flowers for girls, for women. Romantic gesture. And they had been brought to her at 42. But they had been brought, and it was important, valuable. They're very beautiful, she said, her voice trembling. Mr. Radcliffe, thank you so much. Truly very beautiful. Spring is coming, Percival said, smiling. Winter is over, a new season beginning. A new beginning, hope, renewal. And I thought I should share with you this feeling, this hope. Winifred nodded. She couldn't speak. Her throat was knotted. She only smiled. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she was happy, very happy, happier than she'd felt in a long time. Yes, she finally said, a new beginning. Thank you so much. She found a vase, glass old, from one on the shelves. She filled it with water, placed the flowers inside. She positioned it in the table's center. Let it stay there. Everyone see. She see every day. Remember, that moment, that feeling, that evening, after the shop closed. She didn't immediately go upstairs. Percival stayed. Together, they went upstairs. Winifred's flat, but she invited Percival for the first time. Would you like to have dinner? She asked with courage. There's not much. A simple meal, but we'll eat together. Talk, would that be all right? Percival accepted, gladly. I'd love to, he said, if it's no trouble. No trouble, Winifred said. On the contrary, it would be very nice. They went upstairs, up the narrow stairs. Percival ascending slowly, Winifred ahead. They entered the flat. Percival was seeing it for the first time. Small, simple, but warm. Books everywhere, on shelves, tables, chairs. Winifred apologized for the mess, but Percival loved it. A book lover's home, he said. Perfect. They prepared dinner together, in the kitchen, Winifred cooking, Percival helping, chopping onions, peeling potatoes, talking, laughing, soup, vegetable soup, bread, butter, cheese, simple but filling. They placed it on the table, sat, ate, slowly, conversing. There was no wine. There was tea. They drank tea, chatted. After dinner, they moved to the sitting room, by the fireplace. Winifred had lit a fire, logs burning, warm, comfortable. They sat, Winifred on the sofa, Percival in the armchair. They talked, for hours. 9 o'clock came, 10 o'clock. Time was late, but they didn't notice. There was only that moment, that space, being together. Finally, Percival stood. "I must go," he said. "It's late, very dark. Home is far. I must walk." Winifred also stood. "Of course," she said, wanting but understanding. "Good night. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful evening." "I thank you," Percival said, "for the dinner, for the conversation, for everything." They walked to the door. Percival put on his coat, took his hat. He stopped, looked at Winifred closely, into her eyes, and he saw something, a question perhaps, a hope, and he spoke slowly, seriously. "Mrs. Ashton." "Winifred," he said, for the first time by her name. "Spending time with you does me a great deal of good. I haven't felt this way in years. Happiness, connection, meaning. I hope you feel similarly. I hope I'm not being a nuisance. I'm an old man. Perhaps I'm coming too frequently." Winifred shook her head quickly. No, she said. "Not a nuisance. Quite the opposite. I feel the same way, Percival. Spending time with you is very valuable to me too. For years I was alone. I thought I'd gotten used to it, but after meeting you I realized I'd been missing it. Connection, sharing, being understood, and I found it with you. Thank you so much for entering my life." Percival breathed deeply, relaxed. "I'm very glad to hear that," he said. "Then we can continue, this friendship of ours, this connection, and perhaps with time it deepens. Who knows?" "Yes," Winifred said, smiling. "Who knows? The future will show. But for now, this is enough. This is beautiful. This is valuable." Percival left into the night's darkness. Winifred watched from the window. The silhouette moved away, disappeared. She closed the door, returned inside. She sat by the fire. She thought that day, that evening, flowers, dinner, conversation, and she felt happiness, pure happiness that she hadn't felt in a long time, perhaps never felt this much, and she knew life had changed, for the better, very much for the better. Months passed. March turned to April, April to May, May to June. Spring fully arrived. Flowers bloomed, trees greened, weather warmed, days lengthened, sun bright. The town came alive. People went outside, gardens, parks, walks, life in the open air. Percival and Winifred continued spending time together, not only in the shop now, outside too. Sunday afternoons after church they went on walks, to the hills around town, along old paths, green fields, flowers, birds, view from the hilltop, valley below, houses small, church steeple rising, river gleaming in the distance in the sun. They walked slowly, at Percival's pace, stick helping. They stopped and rested on benches, on stones. They talked. They were silent, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. No discomfort, comfortable, peaceful. They watched nature, the peace of existence. In the evenings, sometimes at Percival's house, sometimes at Winifred's flat, they ate dinner. They prepared it together, shopping together, market, vegetables, meat ingredients, cooking at home, simple meals but made together, shared, sitting at the table, eating together, talking, laughing, even in silent moments, feeling comfortable, feeling complete. They talked for hours, inexhaustible topics, the past childhoods, families, Winifred losing her mother, Percival staying briefly at an orphanage until his grandmother took him, first jobs, first loves, failures, successes, many regrets, but acceptance exists. The future, what will happen, what to do, retirement, old age, They even talked about death, fearlessly, openly, as a natural thing, inevitable, but still distant. Still there's time. There are days to live, days to spend together. Much hope. One evening, end of June, days long, sun sets at 9, weather mild, windows open, breeze light, bird sounds. Percival and Winifred were sitting in Winifred's flat. They had eaten dinner, drunk tea. Now they simply sat, silently, comfortably. Percival spoke, seriously, slowly. "Winifred," he said, "by name." They always addressed by name now. Formality was gone. "I lived alone for years, nearly 50 years. I chose this. At first it happened unintentionally. Then I got used to it. Then I chose it, to focus on my work. I thought I didn't want anything else. But now I'm retired. There's no work. There's retirement. There's free time. And loneliness weighs heavily, very heavily. Since meeting you, these past 6 months, everything is lighter, more meaningful. Every day has a purpose. Seeing you, talking with you, spending time with you. And I realized, perhaps I've been wrong for years, made the wrong choice, choosing loneliness. But now there's an opportunity to change, to correct." Winifred listened, silently, attentively. Her heart was fast. What will he say? Continue. She waited. Percival continued. "I'm old now, 72. Perhaps I have 10 years, perhaps 20. Who knows? Perhaps 5. God knows. But these years, however many remain, I want to spend with you, Winifred. Not alone, with you. Together. Every day. Every night. Marrying may be late, may seem strange to people, old people, but I don't care. I want to, and I hope you do too. Winifred, will you marry me?" Tears slid from Winifred's eyes, silently, down her cheeks, but she was smiling, wide, sincere, happy, very happy. "Yes," she said. Her voice trembled, but was definite. "Yes, Percival, yes, I'll marry you. I want to very much, very much. I too was alone, until 42, long years. I thought it was my own choice, but after you I realized I was just afraid of suffering, of losing. But now I understand. Not living is worse. Not risking pain, but also missing the chance for happiness is worse. I met you, connected with you, became happy with you, and yes, I want to marry you, very much." Percival stood slowly. Winifred also stood. They approached, embraced for the first time. Tight, long, warm. 2 bodies united. 2 hearts beat side by side. 2 souls met, and they stood silently, for a long time. No need for words. Feeling was enough. A month later, in the first week of October, as leaves began to fall, golden yellow, crimson red, the town colored with autumn, in the town's small church, St. Mary's, stone-walled, old stained glass windows, before only a few witnesses they married. Dr. Thompson, Mrs. Porter the seamstress, young Edward, a few more acquaintances. Winifred didn't wear a white dress. She wasn't very young anymore. She wore a light blue dress, appropriate for her age. Simple, elegant, pearl necklace, hair up. She was beautiful, truly beautiful. Happiness makes beautiful. Percival wore a dark gray suit. He'd bought it new. A tailor had made it. Black tie, white shirt, cleanly shaved, hair combed. He was handsome, old but handsome, noble. The ceremony was brief. The priest read, customs, vows, until death do us part. Rings were exchanged, simple gold bands, engraving inside, WNP 1878. They kissed, lightly, respectfully. Applause, congratulations, celebrations. They went outside, into the church garden. There was no photography much in those times, but it was carved into memory. The scene, sky blue, trees golden. Winifred and Percival, hand in hand, smiling, happy, very happy. Witnesses around, joy, shared happiness. Then a small gathering at the town's inn. A few tables, food, wine, tea, conversation, laughter. Percival telling London stories, Winifred stories from the shop. everyone listening, enjoying. A beautiful day, a day to remember, their lives' turning point. They didn't close the shop. Winifred continued working. She loved her work, didn't want to give it up, but she wasn't alone anymore. Percival sometimes helped her with customers, on shelves, cleaning, packages, working together, being together, constantly, valuable. In the evenings, they went upstairs together. Percival now lived there. He'd moved. He'd brought his belongings. He had few belongings. Simple life. Books, clothes. It was enough. Now both there in that small flat together. They ate together. They prepared. They cooked. The table. Sharing. The evening routine changed. Not alone anymore. Together. Conversations. Silences. Comfortable. Everything natural. They read books by the fire. Both read their own books. Sometimes they read aloud to each other. Poetry, paragraphs, sharing. Sometimes they just sat. Presence was enough. Hand in hand sometimes. Touch, closeness. Years passed, seemed fast, but actually slow. Each day lived, each moment full. 2 years passed, 3 years, 5 years. Percival turned 77. Winifred 47. 10 years 82 and 52. They aged together, slowly, gently. Percival's health weakened further. The stick was now always necessary, sometimes 2 sticks. Walking was difficult, stairs difficult. Breathing became difficult sometimes. Coughing, chest pains. The doctor came, medicines, rest, but not serious yet. Just old age, natural process. Winifred's eyes weakened further. Spectacles now full-time, for reading, for writing, even when walking sometimes. Her hair completely whitened, at 52 completely white, but she was still beautiful. The beauty of maturity, experience, wisdom. But they were happy, truly happy. Every day they thanked each other, silently, sometimes aloud. I'm grateful for being with you. You are my life. You are my everything. Simple words but deep meanings. They had lived alone for years. Finally they had found each other. And every day, every moment, every minute spent together was a gift, received with gratitude, not taken lightly, a valued gift. One winter night, December, the year's last month in 1891, 13 years had passed since their marriage. When Percival was 83, at night, silently in his sleep, he died. Winifred was beside him, in bed, sleeping. Early morning, dawn had not yet come. She woke with something, feeling, silence. She turned, looked at Percival, noticed, no movement. He wasn't breathing, his chest wasn't rising, his hands were cold, his face peaceful, as though in comfortable sleep, trace of a smile on his lips. Peace, tranquility, no pain, no struggle, just transition, gentle transition. Winifred cried, silently at first, then aloud. She cried long, perhaps for hours. Tears didn't stop. She embraced Percival, the cooled body, but still Percival. She held on, didn't want to let go, but she knew he had gone. His soul had gone, only the shell remained. And finally she let go, slowly. She laid him down, covered him. She stood, opened the window, for the soul to leave. Belief, tradition, cold air filled in. She cried more, sat beside him, for hours. Morning came, the sun rose, light came. Winifred stood, called the doctor. He came, determined. Death, natural, old age, heart probably, hadn't suffered. A good death, if there is such a thing. The funeral home was notified. They came, took him, took Percival away. Winifred was left alone. Empty house, empty bed, empty world. But she cried. Yes, cried much, for days, for weeks. There was pain, loss, loneliness again. But at the same time she was grateful because Percival hadn't suffered. He wasn't in hospital. He'd died at home, in his own bed, Winifred beside him. He'd gone peacefully, and they had spent 13 years together. 13 valuable, meaningful, happy years. Some people never experience such happiness. They had experienced it. It had started late, but they had experienced it, and this was enough. This was much. This was everything. The funeral was held with a small ceremony, in the town cemetery, in the church garden, beside St. Mary's. Winter day, cold, snow wasn't falling, but the air was icy. A few people came. The doctor, the seamstress, Edward, no longer young, middle-aged, a few more acquaintances. The priest read prayers. Winifred stood at the grave's head, black dress, black shawl, collapsed, tired but standing. Cold wind whipped her face, but she didn't notice, didn't feel, numb, in shock. In her hand was Wordsworth's book, the first book Percival had bought. That first day, 13 years ago, that first day in the shop, when the bell rang, and she read aloud a poem about nature, peace, immortality, lines composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey. Long poem, beautiful. Her voice trembled, but she read every line. Farewell to Percival, with words, for I have learned to look on nature, not as in the hour of thoughtless youth, but hearing oftentimes the still sad music of humanity. She read, crying but read. She finished, closed the book. She kissed its cover, placed it on the earth, on the grave, to stay with Percival. Then everyone dispersed. Winifred remained last, alone, at the grave's head, looking at the stones. Name not yet carved, would be carved later. Percival Radcliffe, 1808 to 1891, beloved husband, simple, sufficient. Then she turned, walked slowly, left the cemetery, to town, to shop, to home, to the flat upstairs, the empty home. She entered, closed the door. She sat by the fire, didn't light the fire. It was cold, but she didn't notice. She sat in Percival's armchair, his chair. She placed her hand on the armrest where his hand would be. She felt its warmth in her imagination. She closed her eyes. Inside her was sorrow, deep, sharp, pain. Yes, loss, loneliness again, but at the same time peace, a sense of completion, of fullness, paradox but real. She had spent much of her life alone, 42 years, long years, but the last 13 years, the most valuable 13 years, the most meaningful 13 years, she had spent with love, with understanding, with connection, with happiness. Every muscle, every joint, every cell release, sink into the chair's depths. Let gravity take you down to the ground safely. Let your muscles relax. Start from the feet, toes relax, feet relax, calves relax, knees sleeping, hips heavy, your shoulders drop, dropping, no weight, hands, arms heavy, head heavy, sinking into the pillow. Your jaw opens, relaxes, tongue resting, eyes heavy, closed, stay closed. Let your thoughts flow away, like a river, unceasingly, quickly, flowing, away, away, becoming invisible. Doesn't matter, you'll think tomorrow. Now just rest, now just release, now just sleep. Day is over, this day, beautiful, difficult, whatever it was, it's over. Tomorrow will come, new day, new opportunities. But now is just time for rest, now is just time for sleep. Two strangers had met in a bookshop one winter evening while snow fell. A book sale, a cup of tea, a shared silence, and they had found each other. Their souls had met, two old souls but with young hearts, and they had shared a lifetime. They had laughed together, cried together, aged together, and finally, Percival had gone, but Winifred remained. But she wasn't alone. In memory, Percival was there, in her heart, every day, every moment, every word, every glance, every touch in memory, and this was eternal. No one could take it, and this was enough. This was the most beautiful thing life could offer. Love, connection, understanding, sharing, being together, and then farewell. Pain but acceptance, peace, completion. Life was complete, full, meaningful, and Winifred knew, sooner or later, perhaps 5 years, perhaps 10, she too would go, and she would meet Percival, wherever, whatever, she believed, she felt, and until then, she would live, for Percival, for his memory, for his love. She would continue, she would operate the shop, sell books, help people, and every night, by the fire, she would remember Percival. She would smile, she would cry, but with peace, with tranquility, with gratitude. Now you too, just like Winifred, just like Percival, have come to this day's end, this story's end. But life continues, your life, and this is beautiful. Close your eyes, if they're not yet closed. If they're not completely closed, close them, deeply. Breathe slowly, deeply, to the very bottom of your lungs. Feel the fullness, and release through the mouth, slowly, even slower, until completely empty. Release the day's tiredness, its thoughts, its worries, its sorrows, its joys, everything. Let it go. Don't hold. Let it flow away. No need to do anything. No need to go anywhere. No need to think anything. Just here, now, in this moment. Comfortable, safe, at peace. Let your body sink into the bed's softness. Deep sleep, peaceful sleep. Winifred's peace is yours. Percival's tranquility is yours. The meeting of two souls within you. Love connection, meaning all yours. Always there, in your heart, in your soul. And now sleep. With them, with peace. Sleep now. Allow it. Sleep deeply, deeply. Sleep safely, peacefully, warmly. The world is safe. You are safe. Everything is all right. You can sleep comfortably, deeply. Good night, peaceful sleep. Sweet dreams. Sleep. Sleep now. Good night.